excited. I've learned much. And let's just keep the flow. Let's keep the flow right where it is. So with that, I'm not going to do too much talking tonight because I'm really sitting here anxiously to hear from our panelists. And I'm going to bring forth our moderator, facilitator tonight, a brother that I have known before he probably got a chance to know himself. The great one. I call him our brother, the Jibrilliant, Brother Jibril Muhammad. Thank you very much. Sit back, relax, enjoy. We're about to take off.
All right, all right. Peace and blessings, family. Thank you, Brother Leroy, for that awesome introduction. I am unworthy of some of those words, striving to meet and get to that point. Again, family, as he so eloquently stated, my name is Brother Jibril Muhammad. I also go by Jibrilliant Engineer on social media. I am a proud FOI, Fruit of Islam of the Nation of Islam. I am also the proud Director of Engineering of a budding Black-owned research and development company known as Original Man Scientific, where we deliver the advantages of R&D to your community. Also the proud co-host of a subsidiary podcast called The STEM Files. We are the voice of STEM talent in Black culture. If you want to know more information about those things specifically, you can follow the STEM Files on Instagram and as well as Facebook, as well as Original Man Scientific at OMANSCI_ on Facebook as well as Instagram. But that's not why we're here today. We are here to discuss the third installment of Violence Averted, Accepting a New Paradigm. Where do we go from here? Tonight's show, or tonight's discussion, is entitled Self-Governance, Self-Policing, a Community Rebuilt. Family, in our 400+ year sojourn here in America, we understand that our communities were not always in the shape that they are in today. The Black family, the brown family, the indigenous family was not always fractured as it may look today. Certain things were done to put us in this position, but also certain things are being done, certain movements to get us further to or back to where we once were. So without further ado, I want to introduce or have my illustrious panelists introduce themselves to move us further into this conversation so that we unpack and get some solutions going forward on rebuilding our communities. So with that, I'll have everyone unmute themselves and show their screens. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All praises due to Allah. Thank y'all so much. Again, we're back again, family. Doing our best to give gain, not only for ourselves, but for our communities, making them a safe and decent place to live. Community rebuilt. I thought it would be very important to unpack a few terms. Not that people wouldn't understand it, but to really hone in on what we're discussing tonight. So I wanted to start with a few in particular, them being governance. So according to the definition, governance is the act or manner of governing, sway or control. Policing is the maintenance of law and order by a police force, the enforcement of regulations or an agreement. Community policing, very interesting. The system of allocating police officers to particular areas so that they become familiar with the local inhabitants. Lastly, community, a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common, a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. So as we begin to talk about self-governance, self-policing, the ability to really maintain a level of sway or control around our surroundings, something very trendy comes up. I'm sure we are all familiar with the term defund the police. And I want to begin with our big brother Gabriel to begin unpacking this term and kind of to see what the various viewpoints of it is or are. So, beloved, if you wouldn't mind starting, what does the term defund the police imply to the general public, and how does the government see it? What do the activists believe that term to be?
Thank you, Brother Jabril, and thank you, family. And it's always an honor to be amongst the beloved community here. And as we try to build on this question, and this is a heck of a question to kind of dive into first. I think my first thought is we need to go to the history. That's always my focus, and it's always the root of my examination. The police as an entity and as a force began as what? They began as a slave patrol.
Yes, sir.
They began as a way in which to capture the so-called runaway, whether it was in the deep south or frankly in some cases the north. That is in fact the essence and the starting, if you will, of police force in this country, United States. And so I think it's really important, as my elders have always taught me, that when you talk about a thing, to know how a thing started, to know why a thing was even produced onto the planet. And so we talk about defunding the police. Let me also say that it's not a new term, although it may be new for some.
Right.
Our comrade Angela Davis, who we know has been, on the front lines of this work for the past 40 years, was doing this work about defunding police back in the 70s and 80s. You know, she has writings talking about the fact that we need a new imagination and a way to think through differently how we look at, as you said, community policing and ways to, as you also said, govern ourselves. Because
yes.
frankly, for too long, the ways that have governed ourselves have been unhealthy and at least, but at most, deadly. And so really we need a new conversation. We need a new dialogue. Also, our sister who wrote The New Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander, talked a lot about the effects of mass incarceration and how policing affects that as well. I would argue that no longer should we use the term mass incarceration. Really, it's targeted incarceration, because they're targeting the Black and brown communities, not only here in Philadelphia, but in every major city across the country. And so defund the police really means to, I think, the general public. I think some folks who are not familiar with the term may say, wait a minute, my neighborhood has been violent for years. My neighborhood has been violent. We don't want to end the police. We need more support for them. So I think that one thing that might be key about that is how do we look at education, right? In other words, right now we're in the election time. People always talk about voter registration, but what's more important than voter registration is voter education, knowing who you're voting for and why. And so it's the same thing in this conversation. When it comes to policing, folks may not understand the full capacity or diameter of what we're talking about. So we want to educate, provide teachings on what this means. I think to the government, as we've seen on the news cycle and in papers, they think it's completely destroying police as we know it.
Right.
Right. Now, for some people, that actually is the case. But I would argue that for most people, what they're saying is to activists who've been on the ground is two things. One is it's an acknowledgement that what's been currently in our cities does not work.
Right.
You know, we would be insane to think that the current format, the current structure of how things operate actually works for Black people. We would be insane to think that. And one thing I want to also, put in is that although it's a new idea, perhaps in lexicon, it's something that we should always think about. Why? My elders taught me that we talk about separation. Separation didn't only mean geography. Separation didn't only mean geography. Separation also meant ideology and mindset. So when we create a new world for ourselves as Black people, we're not just saying just space. We're saying the way that our women deal with themselves in giving birth to hospitals probably should be different. Thus the rise of midwives and doulas. And the way, if we create our own nation, we're probably going to teach our babies differently than the way they've been taught up to this far, correct? And so that also goes to every system that we're operating in. We're going to have to take a very critical eye and look and figure out, has this worked for us? And if we can all agree that it hasn't, what should be the new formation? And so for activists, folks are saying, look, let's take the millions of dollars, or in some cases like New York City, billions of dollars that you put towards militarizing the police and creating opportunities where police can get all sorts of tanks and all kinds of, war technology, repurpose those funds to community investment, right? So to be able to produce the things and the resources and services that folks need. What does that mean? That means that there might be people watching right now who are social workers, who are people who are on the grassroots, who own small businesses, people who have, you know, ideas that can really flourish in the community. Whereas we understand that crime stems from resources, right?
Come
I'll
on,
close by saying,
right?
I'll close by saying this: the safest communities don't have the most police; they have the most resources. I'm gonna say it again:
Come on.
the safest communities don't have the most police; they have the most resources. Okay, why? Why is that? Because if you raise a child and that child understands who they are in the school setting, they're able to go to school, they're able to go to college, they're able to maintain a job, their parents are able to maintain health care, they're able to go to healthy food grocery stores, buy healthy foods, they're able to go to a work library. They don't live anywhere near a toxic or noxious gas elements, right? There's nobody trying to deploy garbage or trash. It's not litter services. Garbage is picked up on a daily, right? If communities get the resources, there's so much data that shows that child, that young person will not resort to crime. It's just the bottom line. And so we're saying, let's surround our communities. Let's invest back into the village, those resources with those dollars that y'all have. And on the front end, in the long-term sense, will actually come out better and deeper as a people and as a community.
Wow, wow. I got to give some snaps to that one because I feel like my mind is racing so much because you hit so many different points in such a short time. And there's so many things I want to highlight, but I want to go to something. If anybody's familiar with Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi said to Anakin Skywalker when he was going to the dark side, he said, only a Sith deals in absolutes. Why that's important is when you say defund the police, I think there's a lot of absolutism that comes up in that, whereas though it means one thing, take money away, disband. No, like you were saying, and I was going through some things on social media. I feel like there's a you know, a lack of understanding or comprehension or reading that's occurring where a lot of sensationalism is, oh, defund the police. Well, you know, my community needs police officers. You know, NBA Hall of Famer Charles Barkley says something to the degree of, you know, he doesn't agree with defund the police. Who black people supposed to call Ghostbusters? You know what I'm saying? So when you think about that, what we say, I almost feel like the campaign or the trend is almost kind of misrepresented or misadvertised in a way where maybe if you say reform or the fact that defunding doesn't necessarily mean to just take away or to get rid of, but to reallocate to things. Because first of all, not all crimes are violent crimes. A lot of times what people are missing is mentorship, conflict resolution, right? Like you were saying, resources, activities. A lot of our children are bored out their minds and just don't have things to do. We've all witnessed it. We'll drive to certain, you know, quote unquote white neighborhoods or suburbs and see how everything from a certain home, those certain quality of things for quality of life are within walking distance or a short drive, right? To where as though your mind can go to places other than how I'm going to get it, how stay in survival mode. So you brought up so much for that. So
Not to mention real quick, Brother Jabril, 40% of the brothers and sisters who are arrested and put in state jails have a mental health condition. 40% have a mental health condition. So now we're dealing with, so now as Brother Gabe, you know, is having a condition, is having an issue, having an episode. Perhaps Brother Gabe has bipolar. Perhaps Brother Gabe is schizophrenic. Perhaps Brother Gabe has severe depression. Perhaps Brother Gabe has hyperanxiety disorder. The police may or may not be the best person to come get Brother Gabe out the house, right? Maybe somebody who, like my colleagues who are clinicians, who are therapists, can come, calm me down, know what to say to me, may even have other opportunities because they've been trained, right, in how to deal with that kind of situation. That's really also got to be part of the conversation as well.
Yes, sir, absolutely. I want to tag Sister Camille, and I see a lot of nodding real quick. I want to get your 2 cents on something specifically. So do we feel, based on what Brother is saying and the different ideas, that defund the police needs to be repackaged or rephrased? Or do people need to just be less emotional and do more research and read to get a comprehensive understanding on what that means? Sis?
To be honest, I have to put it on self, right? It has to be on each individual. I feel like we live in a society and have been indoctrinated into a society where we lean on others to educate us, right?
Right.
To think that they're going to provide us with the information that we need and that understanding. But as we can see, over hundreds of years, that's not the game that they play, you know?
Right.
So we have to take it into our own hands to really get out here and find out, even an organization who started that saying, right?
Right.
What is it exactly that they're looking to achieve, right?
Right.
And absolutely, we need to talk about reallocating funds, right? Creating things that don't give our youth idle time in that way, because that's really what it is. Being a mother and watching my son grow and not have places for him to go get his pent up energy out, that's going to turn into a negative thing. It's very clear. If we continue to live in spaces where, if I maybe was not educated enough to get him out to find things for him to do, you know, or had the resources, just as Brother Gabe said, to get him out and find things for him to do so that he can expand his mind, then he's going to turn to things that are just to fill idle time. So yes, we have to educate ourselves in that way about what defunding the police is and what it will look like for our individual communities.
All praise be to Allah. Thank you so much, family. As we continue, so we're talking about the concept of defunding police. We're kind of contextualizing for ourselves and for different communities what it may mean. But I want to segue to our brother Lamond. When we talk about seeing ourselves in the picture and really the how to. Okay, well, we have defunding police. We have the concept of self-governance, self-policing. But beloved, if you would be so kind, how do we self-police our own communities? And what are some current blueprints or a current blueprint for self-policing?
Well, beloved brother, I'm going to hit on that, but I just wanted to say something that ties right into that with this defunding the police idea, because I want to share something with us. I just wanted to look up how much money is spent on the police budget.
Come on.
Right here in Philadelphia, they cut the budget $33 million, but they spent $727 million on the police budget here. In New York, they went from 10.5 billion to 10.2 billion.
Right.
In Newark, New Jersey, they spend over $208 million on the budget, which is 29%. In Baltimore, they spend $549 million on policing. That's 26% of the budget. Then in Chicago, they spend $1,776,930,437 on policing. That's 37% of the budget. So when we're talking about this question of defunding the police, we're talking about redistributing and reallocating funds to other places, because it's obvious that they don't know how to police our community. So what we're saying is, give us a pie of that. Give us a piece of that pie. Give us 5% of that $1 billion that you're giving to the police, and give to some other safety patrols or some organizations that we have confidence in that can police our communities effectively. Because
but Lamont, your sound kind of went out, beloved. We can't hear you. Brother Lamont, we can't hear you.
Look what he said. He said, we do not have to be equal in knowledge with every nation to be successful in. We have enough technicians, mathematicians, construction engineers, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, physicists, chemists, educators, and agriculturalists. So we have everything that we need to govern ourselves. Now, when you say, where is the template? Unlike us, every time there's an election, we're running around here because we're disconnected from the living We're running around here talking about vote or die, vote or die. Every 4 years, saying the same slogan, and that's because we don't have a knowledge of who we are. Now look at the Asian community. You and I can go right down to Chinatown. You have never seen one Asian person walking around with a shirt on any election season talking about vote or die.
I've never seen
down there in their community, they have Asian police. You go into other places, they have a Greek town, they have a Chinatown. So what we're saying is we need our Aboriginal or Africa town, and we have qualified men or women to police our own community. It's just us getting up off our behind and believing in ourselves and believing that we're the gods that we've been chosen to be, and reaching out to them qualified engineers, them qualified physicists, them qualified chemists, them qualified doctors or nurses, and telling them, look, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked a simple question. Give us, because you didn't give us the 40 acres and a mule, give us 8 to 10 states that are fertile and minerally rich with an outlet to the sea. Give us those states that you stole from the Aboriginal people. That's the start. And we can begin to self-police when you take a chunk of that $1 million and $1 billion budget that you're giving to the police. $10.5 billion in New York City. Granted, New York City is a large city. They employ 55,000 employees, but you're spending $10.5 billion to give somebody that, to empower them with the ideology of white supremacy, and they're beating the hell out of us, and then going to court and getting a settlement that the taxpayer got to pay for. Think of that.
That's right.
So we have the ability to police ourselves. Brother Gabe hit it, the resources. So all we saying in closing, give us some of that $1 million budget. Give us some of that $1 billion budget so we can get the resources to police. We're not saying eliminate the patrol officers, because to a degree, they have made us into savages for us to need patrol officers. It's unfortunate, but we got to be honest. They have made us into savages. They have made our communities into war zones. So we can't defund the police gonna mean do away with them. No, we need the resources. And that's all we saying is give us a part of that budget and we'll be able to police ourselves. You got the FOI, you got the black, we got so many Black Panthers, you got the peacekeepers. We got respect in our community, and we have been in large venues where there have been no violence. Prime example, the Million Man March, the greatest gathering that ever took place in our history. Over 2 million men was there. There was no violence that day. So we can police ourselves. We just need the resources.
And I just wanted to chime in real quick if I could.
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
When we're talking about self-policing, it's really no different than, anything else that we talk about. And particularly what I mean is, like, let's say education. All right, in the public school system, there's this big problem. Oh, Black boys and Black girls, aren't successful, or they're not matriculating, this, that, and the third. But once you start putting those Black teachers in the kindergarten, in the first grade, in the second grade, and the third grade, you start to see a dramatic change in the path in which these students start going on. So, the problem isn't that, the people aren't capable. The problem is that you aren't getting, like, somebody said before, we aren't getting the resources at the proper time that we need them to make sure that we're on that particular track. So when we're talking about policing ourselves, it's the exact same thing as us educating ourselves, right? I went to a black college, and most of my professors were, mostly African. So, being able to learn in that particular environment definitely has a particular effect on how you approach learning. It has a particular effect on how you approach your community. It has a particular effect on just how you approach different things, in your life, just by having that image that's there. And like we were saying before, if you have people that are in your community, policing your community, that are from your community, you know how to deal with the people from your community. Instead of somebody from all the way on the other side of town coming inside of my community and not knowing, how people are moving, not knowing, the problems of the people in those particular communities. You're going to deal with it in a much different way than somebody that was, just down the street, that say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to join this particular organization to help police my community. You know, you already know, you grew up right down the street. You see what I'm saying?
That's
You
right.
already know how people act. Now it's like, all right, cool. We can go ahead and we can diffuse situations without even having to put our hands on nobody, because we're already familiar with this environment. That only makes sense. This is just like you're asking a hyena to go from a hyena den to a lion's den and police it. How does that work? You see what I'm saying? They don't know nothing about each other. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, it only makes sense for the people who are in these communities and, you know, are in, you know, the close vicinity to each other, to police each other and to make sure that, you know, everything is going smoothly. So I just wanted to point that out really quickly.
Thank you so much, beloved. You brought up again, seeing yourself in the picture. And I actually want to talk a bit about a point that you said about those two animals. It's not so much that the hyena and the lion don't know about each other. The hyena and the lion are natural enemies. So in addition to maybe an unknown entity dealing with someone you don't really know, imagine an enemy being the police over its natural enemy, which is what we've had to deal with. That's the exact situation that is present in our communities. You have people that not only don't even live there, but are even trained in certain ways to deal with us in a certain way. So we're saying the word policing, but again, I want to get us to understand, for those watching and listening, that we really mean control. Imagine policing goes so much farther than having a billy club and a gun, or marching through the streets and looking menacing, or busting up, you know, crime rings and stuff. Policing is conflict resolution. Policing is mental health education and or counseling. Policing is having not corner stores, but produce food markets, so that we're not feeding our babies and our people the things that wire us in a certain way to be more hyper and or more aggressive. Policing is having circulating our dollar in our community. This is how you begin to control and then make your community resource. Imagine that child that goes to school and had that teacher say they're not going to be X, Y, and Z, and instead of getting angry and then trying to do something against that teacher or take it out on someone near them, you got someone, right, an elder, a cousin, somebody, they go right back to their community and then resource them and tool them in exactly what they want them to do. It starts to change the mental state. Like, I can calm down and actually achieve my dream because somebody's going to work with me. So all these things are ways that we will then police or control ourselves by multiple different resources. So thank you so much, Dante, for that point. Family, again, this is self-governance, self-policing, a community rebuilt. Everyone, thank you so much for watching thus far. Please give us questions and comments in the comment section. We are more than happy to answer anything you may have. Continuing down, we want to go to Sister Camille. We really talked about this, started to unpack this already, but defund the police, self-policing, doing for self, right? We have to be educated properly to even understand what that means. And we have to know the effect that doing this will have on our educational system. So what role does self-governance play in education?
So it's an excellent question. I think that, you know, sometimes we get detached from how things are related in a way, right? To understand that, just as Brother Gabe pointed out earlier, lack of resources and especially receiving education where we are miseducated, right? Where we don't learn true history, actual facts, where things are misconstrued, right? I want to first open with a quote from a highly celebrated Black man in America, Martin Luther King Jr.
Right.
He says, the function of education is to teach one to think intensely and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education.
One more time.
Yes. You need it again? Yes. Okay, he says the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of education.
Mm-hmm.
Intelligence plus character. So as you also brought up, Brother Jabril, speaking about things like mental health education, right? That's one thing, again, that I see as a parent with a child in a public school system, that's nothing that's being taught. So they make it like kindergarten. We all think, right? In kindergarten, children go there to be socialized, is what people like to say. Because I'm absolutely an advocate for homeschool. When I can make it work, I'm gonna do it. Okay. And so, in that way, when we think that our children are going there to receive some type of emotional education, for someone to be giving them skills and emotional well-being, that's not what's actually going on. These people are heavily focused on discipline, right? And creating a person who is going to follow instructions. Okay? Know that part about education. So we're already going into a system in a way, and I think that, you know, if all of us are from public school, right, or have family members that have grew up in public school, you can see this system work very well to create a worker, to create people who are out here to follow directions, to send people through that school to prison pipeline, right? Because that's the best place for them that you can land so that they have the ultimate control and upper hand, right?
Right.
So we want to get out of that. We want to get out of that way, right? And as we're in this election time, I had to, as I was pondering over this question, I couldn't stop to think how people say voting is what our ancestors died for.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think your ancestors died for? They need you to vote.
Right.
What I do absolutely know is that my ancestors died for me to educate myself, because plenty of them did that before now. Before these institutions, they were struggling and knew that they needed to get their hands on books as they were out tilling the land, right? Whatever that they could get a piece of a newspaper, a piece of what the master wrote down, so that they could see and formulate these things, because they knew they needed knowledge, right?
That's
They
right.
they sought that. They sought that knowledge out, right? That's what my ancestors died for. I don't know anything about voting right now, but they absolutely died for me to educate myself, to know that I have the power to educate myself, right? To believe in the fact that if it is something I need to know, then I know how to get it. Do you understand what I mean? So we have also during segregation, where they had Black libraries or places where only we could go to get books, and we weren't allowed to read the books that they were reading. Still, that's going into what, the 50s? Still, that's very recent. That you're not allowed to possibly, you brothers as engineers, read a book that will help further you in that area. Right? So they want to maintain that upper hand. We have to be willing to seek knowledge. So I believe that, you know, becoming more self-sufficient really is the goal in that area, right? I believe that we need to understand that there's a power within ourselves and in our communities, right? That we have people more than willing and able to educate our children. That it makes it seem like, right, when you go into a public school, especially in a major city, especially a place like Philadelphia, where you'll get into this school and a majority of these teachers do not look like their students. They do not. That is not a mistake, okay? Because we have people who are very qualified, probably overqualified, and would love to teach our children, but they are not allowing them in that space. They find any little thing for them not to be allowed in that space, and not in a way where they can make an impact on that young mind, as Brother Dante brought up, when our children are impressionable. So we have to really take hold of that and understand the benefit that a child seeing their reflection is going to do for how we further govern ourselves, for how we further grow our communities and grow a nation, that is full of self-sufficient people,
Right.
full of youth striving to build the things, the institutions that we need, you know, to bring in the resources that we need for us to really be a challenging nation amongst nations, in order to have the things that we need for us first, instead of going out to possibly you know, try to blend in and mingle into these other corporations that look good because it's by society standards.
Right.
That's where we should go once we get an education, right?
Right.
It's not that we should come and create our own institutions. Why would they teach us that? We have to want that for ourselves. We absolutely have to want that for ourselves. And so I do want to close on the role of education and self-governance with a quote from Booker T. Washington, a man who absolutely struggled to receive his education, to educate himself from slavery, okay? The world cares very little for what you or I know, but it does care a great deal about what you or I do. So we need to get to work. We have to do it ourselves.
I have so much to say for that, and this will be an open floor question because I think it's very, very key to our moving forward. We all know that Black people in America, or the Aboriginal family, is not a monolith. We come from different places, have different ideologies, different backgrounds. Some will say, or some may feel, that it's hard to truly unify across ideologies. Sister's talking about a nation. She mentioned compliance or conformity versus free thinking. She talked about that quote being not caring about what we know or presume to know versus what we do. With we as a people not being a monolith, is it possible for us to truly be a nation? And why can't we just settle on the best part of each other, what we know, and reduce things to universal principles, and then be able to align ourselves that way and move forward? And that's where anybody can chime in now, all of us. Sister Jasmine, you haven't spoken yet. If you want to give something. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I think a big part of that really comes down to self-love. And when we love ourselves and who we are, we can see ourselves in each other. I can see myself in you, or I can see myself in my sister or my brother. And if I can see myself in you, then I understand, or firstly look at the best parts of you versus how me and you are different. So if I can love you and also love myself, I focus on the commonality between each other versus the differences between each other. It's automatically a positive connotation to that. So I think in working on self-love, that really helps us to build as a nation, because we're connecting on another level, if that makes sense. So yes, sir.
Yes, man. Really quickly, family, just something else to help advance the conversation. I love what you said, Queen, going back to self-love. If we notice when we're educated, we go through school, right? How many people are really asking about the different languages or histories that you learn in school? You may not, if you go to school for business, you may not all bank the same, but you'll still learn about different banking systems. You know, if you go to school for engineering, we may not all have the same engineering discipline, or all, you know, go as high in math, but we'll all learn these different areas. So when we talk about our people, there are some people who hail Noble Drew Ali as their Lord and Savior. Some people don't. But does that mean I should be anti-learning about Noble Drew Ali? Some people don't follow the Honorable Marcus Garvey, right? And don't necessarily agree with everything. However, this is a stalwart in our community for what can be done in terms of separation and Black power. Some people don't believe that Allah came in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad. However, you see what he was able to produce. So whether you agree with these men or women or not, their ability to produce something great and something of value for us, should that not be the foundation by which we govern ourselves. And that's all I have. Let y'all rock with that.
And if I could add one more thing really quick, there's also got to be a trust, right? We've got to trust each other. And so if I don't trust you because of everything that I have in my mind that's been instilled there about you, then I don't trust that what you follow or what you're doing or what you're into has value, right? And so it's that this mentality that we have of like, you know, the white man's ice is colder. You know what I mean? So depending on where the source of information is from, if it's coming from you, my brother, I'm automatically skeptical because I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if that'll be beneficial to me. I don't know if that'll help me automatically because it's you. But I'll take, you know, something that's coming from a white counterpart. And because it's coming from them, there's a blind and blatant trust that we don't have with each other that we need to build with each other. And it also kind of goes into just kind of going back a quick comment about when we were talking about defunding the police. And, you know, we really have to self-educate, right? Like we were saying. There was a commercial, it was a political Trump commercial. And so in the commercial, they were talking about, oh, they want to defund the police. And so it was someone calling 911. And when they picked up 911, or they picked up, it was an answer machine, and they said, oh, if you are here to, you know, report a murder, press 1, or a rape, press 2, and someone will get back to you later because they defunded the police, so there's no one here to help you. Like, it's scare tactics and political propaganda that's going on right now around that. And so if we don't self-educate ourselves and stop blatantly trusting because something is in the media or on the news or coming from a white man, that the information is true and real and beneficial for us. So yes, sir. I just wanted to add that part.
Anybody? Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I want to jump in on a couple of points. One is, you know, what Jasmine just pointed out was so powerful because it speaks to the fear mongering that our enemy will still allow with to this day with regards to mismanaging and misordering and providing straight deception to masses of people. If it was so radical, if it was so impossible to quote unquote defund the police, then we wouldn't have seen multiple cities across the country do it overnight.
Come on.
What did we see this summer after the protests? We saw New York City defund their budget for the police by $1 billion. That's with a B, not an M. We saw here in Philadelphia, as you said, multi-millions, as Brother Lamont said. We saw in LA, they cut their police budget by $150 million. We saw in Austin, Texas, they cut their police budget by a third, all right? We saw Denver, Colorado cut their police budget by $10 million. And of course, the epicenter where Judge Floyd was killed, and we talk about Minneapolis, they totally disbanded it and are trying to build it back up again. So again, if it was so radical, so far left, so out of possibility and range of ideas, then this wouldn't be able to happen. It all comes down to what? Political will, right? And being able to be pushed, which is why I've always been, and although I understand some of us who say protesting ain't my thing, that's fine, which gets back to your point. Protesting may not be your thing, but it must be part of a thing. See, it's okay if it's not the thing. That's not an issue. See, our issue isn't that is the issue becomes a thing if this becomes the thing to do. No, it's a tool. It's a hammer as opposed to a pair of pliers. You understand that? And so we don't want to just protest, but it's a way in which without the protest, we don't get those $1 million cut, which is going to come back to our communities. Why is that important? Because now our other wing of the organizers who are already planning and meeting, right, in parks, in basements, in attics, are already saying, you know what, we got to self-police. And so now to the average person, it's becoming more attractive because they're saying, wow, Breonna Taylor didn't get justice. Rayshard Brooks is not getting justice. Elijah McClain, all the names, not getting justice. Now the average parent and guardian is saying, you know what? Now I don't mind if Sister Camille, Reverend Dante's on the block watching every night from 12 to 4 a.m. Now I don't mind if Brother Jabril watches in front of Uncle Bobby's because it keeps being raided. You see what I'm saying? It becomes a conversation that's natural, right? And I want to close with this. You know, to your point, unity does not require uniformity. And I'm going to keep saying that. You know, we don't always need to be uniform in our position. I've been saying this for years. As long as we know that we're on the same path, we can understand that we can still have the vision, which is Black liberation, which is a liberatory space for ourselves that we understand works in our best interest, right? Because so far we know that these systems that we could just put on the whole whiteboard have not worked, be it school, be it policing, be it jobs, be it family, be it hospitals, be it healthcare. Like we can check up all these boxes and say, you know what, for us, it don't work. So what are we going to create and build that's different? I'll close with this. In London, England, to this day, 2020, not 1920, not 1820, to this day in London, England, 90%, that's 90% of their police force, law enforcement, don't carry guns.
Come
90%.
on. Talk about it.
90% in London, England, don't carry guns. They got mace, they got a baton. So the point is, there are examples around the world that show us that this is possible. We just got to figure out a way to make it happen for ourselves.
Come on now. We're gonna unpack that last point too. Anybody else on this open floor question?
I just wanted to add a quick point. I think going back to just kind of like this uniformity and unity type this thing, I think we don't really see ourselves as parts of one, right? So like, you know, in math, like when you have one whole, you can break that down into numerous different fractions as long as you add it up and it becomes one. But in order to add them up to become one, you have to have the same common denominator. So I could be 3/6 and you can be 3/6. Add it up, it comes up to 6/6, 1. Or you know, however you want to break it up. It could be 1 and 5, 1/6 plus 5/6 is 6/6, right? So
right.
So our problem is that we don't have that common denominator. We don't have a common interest. A lot of us in a lot of different organizations or, you know, in our own individual lives or whatever, we have our own specific interest. Oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to do. And they don't really add up. They don't really come to a consensus of what's the, you know, when we talk about a Black agenda, right? You know, we're saying, oh, well, Trump just came out with a Black agenda or Biden has this Black agenda. Well, how can they come up with a Black agenda if Black people don't have our own Black agenda? We're not even uniform on what we want ourselves. So how are we looking for a Black agenda for that's to somebody else to give us? We need to come up with an agenda ourselves and present it to somebody and say, hey, this is what we're asking. This is what we need to do. And, you know, and inside of that consensus, you know, I feel like as long as it's for the progression of Black people, we shouldn't really have a problem with it. Our thing is that, you know, we're looking at one thing and saying, oh, this is it. This is what it's supposed to be, or this is the answer. This is the answer. And when you're dealing with a problem, there's multiple ways to get to the answer. There's what's the saying? There's more than one way to skin a cat. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, but what we need to have is that we need to have the same common consensus. We need to have the same common denominator and the same common interest. And if you have that foundation, if you have that same base, then no matter which way you get to the answer, you see what I'm saying, you'll always arrive to what it is that you want because the base or the foundation is the same. So I think that's what we're struggling with right now. We're trying to figure out, well, we know that we need Black advancement, but how do we do it? Which way to do it? What's the blueprint? What's this? What's that? And, you know, I think in the future, we're going to see a lot of different groups do it their own way. And which is fine. You see what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But you said, as long as we have that common denominator, then we'll eventually get to that one that we're looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So many things. We talked about, Sister Jasmine talked about trust. Brother Dante mentioned coming to a consensus. You know, when you look at nations around the world, right? For example, the continent of Africa, right, has so many different nations and dialects and languages within, right? We don't have to all talk the same, walk the same, wear the same things. I want to be able to, we're taught that, you know, what is it, that God created us in, was it sex and tribes so that we may know one another? Everybody being exactly the same at a certain point isn't interesting, right? The fact that we are all a bit different, though some of us are in, you know, the Nation of Islam, some not, but we are still different with different experiences makes this session interesting. If we all thought this, if we were all clones, it'd be like, well, I mean, why is it 9 of them? Why is it 6 of them? Why not just be one? So my ability to respect and have admiration for traditional Ghanaian garb, Senegalese garb, you know what I'm saying, traditional garb or an FOI uniform. These things, there should be an appreciation and learning. Oh, what does that represent, brother? Oh, why do you wear your hair like that, sister? Like, these are the things that instead of dividing us, we can come together. Okay, you put that in your bean soup, but okay, you use sea moss for that. Oh, I never thought about that. Or what about this? So we start to learn, and what it comes down to when you talk about self-governance, governance, and the community rebuilt, we have to really return back to the concept that, you know, we all come here and leave here the same way, through that same womb, and we go back and we become, as they say in Lion King, what? The grass. So we have to put being unified as more important over being right. We're so concerned about, quote unquote, being right. And that still is the dominant thought in a lot of our thoughts, where I can look at Brother Lamond and I want to be right versus really be at one with at peace with my brother. You know what I'm saying? So when we talk about rebuilding, and I wanted to say this too, when we put out the advertisement, I think for trauma, going back to that course, we had a gun-toting, you know, young Black woman, and we also had some paramilitary type people on this advertisement. Are guns and ammunition, are weapons absolutely necessary for community policing or control? And if so, why? If not, why?
I will jump on that. I don't believe that it is, as Brother Gabe mentioned. There's plenty of nations who, you know, first of all, police themselves overall, and don't look to be policed by some central agency, right?
Right.
We can absolutely look to those other places and figure out what will work for our population of people.
Right.
What will work for our individual communities, because maybe that's a better system to have a certain area with, you know, as we have precincts that oversee only a certain block radius, that things are broken down more into neighborhoods in that way, that may work best, right? I think that, again, it goes back to that education piece, right? I don't think, you know, in the state and society that we live in here in America, they have it already written in the Constitution to say that we have the right to bear these arms. So we as people should want to protect ourselves. And there's plenty of people who don't even, you know, feel like that's something that they should do. And especially in our community, you don't know how many times I've had conversations with people in our community who are afraid to protect themselves in that way. But if your enemy is brandishing a weapon to that level of power, then what do? Do you just render yourself defenseless? Or do you, again, educate yourself so that you can defend yourself and your family, right? Absolutely, I'm absolutely an advocate for self-protection, for us to thrive by whatever means we need. And so, no, I don't think that we have to have things, you know, ammunition and things that could decimate whole people. But I do absolutely believe that if that's the threat that's coming to you, then you need to educate yourself in that way. So again, if we're going to start doing things anew, we're talking about a community rebuilt. If overall we don't believe that we need that, then maybe our outer force to combat others coming in, because I was someone who was in the military and they go over to places and bully these other countries with these weapons, right? And we see that all the time, talking about different countries having weapons of mass destruction. It's a bullying, it's a fear tactic, it's propaganda, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you have to be prepared. So if your enemy is going to come with that level of power, there's no way you're going to defend yourself and live on if you don't show up in the same way. So we have to be educated in that area.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. Anybody else on that point as we continue?
I'll just say, briefly, it reminds me, your question reminds me of the old statement or the old adage that says, the one thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. And, it would be a failure of ours to, again, create the new world and imagine the new, land for ourselves, but to then replicate the same systems, the same operations, the same functions as they were before, and not figure out something new. I think the question of arming, I agree 1,000% with Sister Zuna when she talks about, making sure that, right now in the current context, 2020, that we're able to defend ourselves, protect ourselves and our homes and our families and our loved ones. I think, as a member of the Black Radical Collective, that's one of our key demands, is that we understand that we want Black folks in the state of Pennsylvania to be able to, get those things to hold themselves, right? And even for those folks who may have records, oftentimes they're not able to get, licenses and whatnot, but they find themselves returning to neighborhoods that are more violent than when they went in sometimes. And so there's a thing that we got to think about in that regard. But I'll close with this and just say, it's a complicated question, but I think it needs the direct time and investment. That's why we need think tanks, right? That's why we need think tanks that could really more carefully, with deliberate research, think through what makes the most sense for us. Again, we saw, for instance, the brothers and sisters who went down to Georgia and bought 90 acres of land, just
right.
last month. I'm sure right now, what I heard, talking to some of the folks, right now they're thinking deliberately, how do we, quote unquote, govern ourselves?
Right.
How do we got the 90 acres of land? If you want to create our own town, not even city, town, right? We want to create our own town. What does it mean for us if a quote unquote crime is committed? How do we deal with it? Right.
Right.
So I think it's a great question to ask, and I think that we should, if anything, lean on the idea of not committing ourselves to all what was done beforehand.
Absolutely. History is best qualified to reward our research.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So this has been an awesome conversation so far. I think, I'm learning a lot, and really my wheels are turning to really how to bring this about. We talked about the concept of defunding the police, what that means for different stakeholders, how it's been sensationalized a bit, and really how we have to self-educate to really understand not only the denotation, but the connotation surrounding terms as they're used in mass media and used person to person. But Lamont gave us, the understanding of really how to start to police ourselves, the different templates that are around, and what we really want in terms of defunding the police to be able to do similar things you see in Little Italy, Little Greek town, right? Little Mexico, Chinatown and such, right? And then we just got finished talking about self-governance and education. So bringing this all together, and we really start to build in our minds the framework for a self-sufficient area, place, landmass, self-governed, self-police for Brother Dante and Sister Jasmine. As we continue, what are the top 3 things we need to begin to rebuild or restructure our communities?
All right, so you want to jump in?
You can go.
Okay. 3 things that I wanted to highlight as top three things in order to rebuild and restructure our communities. The first is self-improvement, right? So we know self-improvement is the basis of community development. A lot of what we see in our communities, the turmoil and the conflicts that we see are just a result or a reflection of the turmoil and internal conflicts that we all have individually within ourselves, right? They're symptoms of an internal disease. And I think a lot of that kind of goes back to, the topic of what we had in our last session about trauma. A lot of us have trauma that hasn't been adequately addressed, from one experience or another. And because of that, that creates this perpetual systems that we have of trauma within our communities, right? And so if I don't, again, self-love, love myself, or know how to treat myself, or know how to value myself, I don't know how to value and treat you. So I think it first starts with self and a lot of the mental, psychological, and spiritual work that we need to do on ourselves. Number two, I'll say, is money, right? And not money, cream, cash rules everything around me. Money makes the world go round. And it's not just about money, but the proper understanding of good economics, right? And the practice of good economics, right? So obviously you need money in order to build businesses, in order to build schools, in order to build healthcare systems. But at the same time, you don't control what you don't own.
Come
right?
on.
So I'll say that again. You don't control what you don't own. And so a prime example of that is if we think about a lot of the health issues that we have in the Black community, right? So the cancer, the heart disease, the diabetes. We know a lot of this is, the root of it is the food that we eat, right? And so are we really choosing the food that we eat? A lot of us might think that we do, right? We might think that, okay, I'm gonna go out and get lunch or dinner tonight, and I'm gonna go somewhere local, according to my taste buds. And we really don't understand or realize the influence of our diet just on what's available and the options that we have around us, right? And so it's really designed that way. There's certain areas of Philadelphia where there aren't quality grocery stores within a reasonable traveling mile radius. And so that creates an environment where we're eating food that's not fresh, and we're eating food that's not even real food. And, we don't realize it's designed that way. Someone designed and put certain food options within our communities, right? Someone put in our communities a liquor store on every corner in some parts of our communities. And when you own your community, you can design it in the way that you want to. You can put the businesses that you want to in your community, right? And when you own land, which is number one for building wealth, in economics, you can grow food on that land in order to pump into your community so we have better dietary options, but also use that land to build wealth to, feed and develop the rest of the community, right? So definitely economics. And then lastly, I'll just say the empowerment and uplifting of women, right? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, a nation can rise no higher than its woman. Absolutely. And so I'm looking at it on multiple levels. A community can rise no higher than its woman. In the words of Tupac, he said that it's time to kill for our women, be real for our women. And if not, we will create a race of babies that hate the ladies that make the babies. So what does that mean? If, you teach a man, you teach an individual, but if you teach a woman, you teach a nation. So if we hate our woman, if we hate our first teacher, then that hate that she feels, that pain that she feels is what she's feeding back into us, and it's a cycle. So respect the woman, the Black woman, protect the Black woman, own land, invest in your economics, and then focus on self. So that's what I'll say.
We said money, right? Or economics, respect and protect the Black woman, right? And you said self-improvement. 3 very, very, very detailed and paramount areas. Thank you so much, Sister Jasmine, Brother Dante.
I'm not changing none of that. She got it. She got it right there. I was just add on, with the whole, self-sufficiency part, and the education. What's going on right now is that, our education is not limited no more, right? I think one of the things that COVID has done is that it's took our learning or our education, it's made it so broad with the use of internet and digitization and all this great stuff. So now the skills that we learn in, we don't have to go to school to learn them, right? We can learn straight from our laptops. And there's a lot of brothers and sisters out there that are doing so many different like master classes. They have an entire, online curriculum teaching you how to do certain things, how to, do certain skills, etc. I'm a part of 2 of them right now. And, you know, and it's really us teaching us, you know, using modern technology. We're literally teaching each other all across the US and even the world in some cases. So our learning is not limited anymore to just a school, right? So this traditional archaic view of learning, going to school for 12 years and then going to another 4, you know, just to not come back to your community and use it, and to go to someone else's community and get a job, like that whole mentality, that whole paradigm is literally crumbling before our eyes. So, you know, when we talk about self-sufficiency, it's so funny. I think back when I was out last year. I was out in California for about 3 months doing training for a job, and I was out in a suburb. It was called Pleasanton, California, and the job was maybe like 10 minutes away. And, you know, as I would drive through like my morning commute, I would just kind of look at the community and just how it was set up. And the apartments that the company had us in was these little apartments ducked off. But I was just paying attention to, like, you know, the area, the stores that were kind of like set up, what kind of stores they were, what was the landscape like, etc. And, you know, the way, you know, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said that study the operations of the white man. He doesn't make any excuses for his mistakes, and he's very successful in his endeavors. And, you know, when I was looking at just kind of where I was and just kind of the layout and how everything was really like mapped out, it was really interesting because, you know, you've seen a whole lot of greenery, you saw a whole lot of parks. Even inside of the apartment complex where we were, there was like a little river, a little stream, you know, different courts for exercise, like a trail for running, gyms, etc. Like all of this literally just right there to promote, you know, health, to promote, you know, clean air, renewable energy, etc. Just all different types of stuff. And then you had a farmer's market literally right down the street. And I think like once or twice every week, like they would have like a collection of farmers from different areas to kind of come into one place and like sell, you know, their goods between each other in like this little marketplace. And, you know, I was just kind of like observing these things. And I'm like, wow, this is very interesting. Like, you know, when you go into other people's communities and you see how they have set their communities up and what's important to them, right? So, you know, some communities love animals. So you have dog parks, and you have, you know, all different types of parks for, you know, these animals, and you have different trails because people like running in the morning, etc. So when I think about, you know, self-sufficiency, you know, we have to really be able to take our culture, and this is where the marriage of culture and engineering come into place, because, you know, we have to take our culture, we have to take what's important to us, we have to take what, you know, we deem as us, our expression, and we have to be able to take those concepts and then transform that into our living. We have to transform that into how we design our buildings. We have to transform that into how we actually lay out and design our communities and our landscape, and, you know, the placement of these buildings and the placement of our stores, etc. So, you know, building our communities really comes from first understanding ourselves, like Sister Jasmine so eloquently said. It comes from self-improvement. It comes from really seeing who we are in our culture, and then taking that and transforming it into taking that inside and then bringing that inside out, and really making it, you know, a place that is a reflection of who we are. So that's the only thing I would add on.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I gotta say just a couple quick things on that. You know, you were talking really, what you really were saying is environment is stronger than nature. Really, with everything you said, that's what I got from it. When you look at our communities, I think about Broad and Alney here in Philly, and I've done the same thing where I would just take a step back and look at the types of stores or places of business that are in our communities. First off, the lack of greenery is very apparent. Why put greenery in an area where you want the population to stay dead? You can't put things that represent life around people that you need to remain dead. So that's a big thing that we don't see a lot. Concrete, bricks, asphalt, etc. Gray in color, black in color, with, or we know, like just dark in color, just like just not without life. Then we look at the stores, right? There's typically always a place for us to spend money on food, which is highly processed and fats. There'll be a place for us to get the new sneakers or designer clothes of some sort. And there'll be a place for us to cash a check. So typically, okay, you got paid today, come cash your check, then go to the corner store, pizza store, whatever, get you something to eat, and then go buy, try on your Jordans and stuff while you eat. And that's it. There's no need to produce things that inspire production in a place where you want people to remain dead to themselves and just be consumers. So when we start to think about, and I love what Sis said about really the root underneath the root, because I was thinking more like, oh, well, we need supermarkets, we need banks, we need these. But before all of that, let's say we had all that. We have the same mindset or we have the same habits. That'll be gone tomorrow. So we start with, right, self-improvement, right, self-examination, self-analysis, self-correction, being so in tune with self that when I see you, I see me, and I'm proud of me. I love me, so I love you, right? Now we go to the monetary aspect. One of the sciences that were withheld from us, how do we do business, right? The Quran speaks against interest when it comes to, credit and debt and things of that thing. Just one thing to throw out there, right? Then when we go to the woman, right? We have so many misrepresentations of women in front of us in entertainment, and then how we treat them is incorrect. But these are the things that kind of will undergird those institutions that we know that we need. So that was so, I love what both of y'all said. And then the last thing I'll just say and have us continue is none of this. We have to get our heads be above water to even think about self-governance, self-policing. But none of this will happen if we don't desire it. A lot of us, we just are, complacent with how things are. And you know what? If you just stop brutalizing me, police, if you just stop just paying me this much and pay me this much, if you just say that, take these statues down, if you just do this, I'll be all right. And that's all I'm asking. Versus, you know what? Rather than you stopping doing this, it doesn't matter if I'm with my own people in a separate place and they ain't got to see it every day. And I just do what I wanted you to do for myself. So that's what we're talking about. And so with that, I want to open up the floor one more time, and just everyone can give maybe a brief one or two things that they either want to do or are doing that is in line with the mission of self-governance or self-police, or really starting to build that community that we're talking about. Yes, sir, Brother Lamont.
Yeah, well, I would say this, as listening to everybody, I just wanted to come back with those three things that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us about the three sciences that we were never taught, and Sister Jasmine hit on it. The science of business, the science of mating, and the science of warfare. And for myself, the science of business, we got a young man in Brother Ben who has really transformed this social media thing, where the young man is under 30 years old and he's making almost 6 figures a month.
That's right.
Now, you got to come out of your comfort zone, that because we don't transition to this digital society now, everybody is online. How can you make it work for you? That's the science of business, supply and demand. How can you make the business work for you? I was talking to a brother that said he talked to one of Puffy's financial advisors. And he was like, how do these people, do all these things, buy all these lavish homes? And he said, a lot of them don't put money in the bank. He said, a lot of them have lines of credit. So if you got $500,000 of a line of credit, then what you pay back, he shared with me, he said, if you had $200,000 a line of credit, he said, if you spent that whole $200,000 line of credit, your payment would only be $280 a month. So we don't know the science of business. We get caught in this banking system by putting money in there, but we haven't been taught the science, the knowledge of how to do things properly. So that's my thing. I want to try to get in. Am I hurting? No. But I want to get into a mindset where I generate some portfolio income, where I ain't always hustling from the muscle. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I gotta
Okay.
hustling for the muscle. And you know that 8 hours a day and all that. No. I invest. I might do a little hustle for 5 or 6 hours, but the other hours I got the money working for me. Also, the science of mate. You know, ain't no thing in building a nation if we don't have a proper mindset of how to mate. Just because you're fine, you know what I mean? You're fine wine. You know, your body looks good. You got a pretty face. That don't mean that me and you are compatible. And
That's
a lot
right.
of times we get caught up in things, but those things have a hindrance on what we're trying to do, because if me and you are not compatible, then we're not going to see things the same. We're not going to be able to build together. And that's very important when we're talking about self-governance, because if my home, like Student Minister Nori said, your home should be your spiritual recharge center, where you can unplug from the world and come home to a queen or king, where y'all can sit down and generate energy from one another to build. You see what I'm saying? Science of warfare. It's obviously that we don't know warfare, but I'm in agreement that land acquisition is the basis of building a nation. But if we don't train, because the minister said business is warfare. So we don't train and we don't know how to defend what we have, then they'll do what they did to us in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They'll come bomb us. They'll do what they did to us in Redwood. You know, so they'll take, like Sister Camille said, they are bullies. They go all around the country. We dealing with a man that's a natural thief and a liar and a murderer. He go around taking whole countries. So
Right.
we have to get in the mindset and know who we dealing with. You're not dealing with no peaceful being. You're dealing with a man that's wicked by nature. And if he see that you have something that he can take, he gonna come take it.
Come on.
So the bottom line is what Brother Gabe said about them brothers that got that 90 acres. They better get in their mind to develop a military within their own ranks of how they're going to be able to police what they have. Because as soon as you and I acquire something, our open enemy is trying to develop a mindset or how he can bully us from taking it from us. And I say this in closing, that the minister said, Minister Rahman, may Allah be pleased with him, a great helper to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We had some land in Georgia. Minister Farrakhan, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, gave Minister Rahman a $750,000 check to pay off the farm in Georgia. Minister Rahman said when he gave the check to the white man, he almost turned red as the hot sauce bottle. You know why? Because over the course of years, that land was accumulating interest. And he was charging us all this interest over the years. So then when we hit him with that check for that ownership, he was messed up psychologically.
Come on.
Into this slave mentality with all of this extra usury and interest. So now when we can hit you with the hit at 750, we want that land. The interest is over. This is ours. You see what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at with educate myself to how can I build where I'm not working so hard. That don't mean I'm lazy. I'm just trying to learn how to work smarter. You know what I mean? Yes, hard work is good, but if you got a way where you can work smarter, then that's how we got to do it today. So that's where I'm at with it.
Thank you so much, sir. Anyone else? We're going to go around the room.
You ask two things.
One or two things, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That we what'd you say? The desire to govern ourselves.
That we ourselves are doing, putting us closer to or are in line with that community development or that concept of self-governance.
Okay. So speaking for myself personally, absolutely on the same energy and wave with the self-improvement. I am a certified peer counselor. And so I do counseling specifically for our culture, right? We're talking about doing things for the culture. Bringing people back to our level of sanity, what's sane for us and what it is that we need to progress, right? Talking through traumas, right, that are specific to us and educating people on skills for wellness, moving forward, and wellness and not illness. So that I do that at Answer the Bell, self-enhancement. Also, creating green spaces. I am an active participant at the North Philly Peace Park. We are there feeding ourselves, right? We grow throughout every season that we can have food there. We have food there. We absolutely do receive donations so that we can feed the community, or we somehow come together to put our funds together so that we can continue to feed the community, because it's people that rely on that, right? We are also building institution there on the land. And this is land that we decided that we would claim as a green space for our community, because we were tired of living in a place that was lifeless.
Come on.
Right? Like you said, full of concrete, full of trash. It was abandoned. And we felt it would be best to get on that land and to grow what it is that the community deserves, not to allow someone to tell us that we should remain stagnant and seeing, things that were lifeless. So that's how I am in a way of self-governing and remaining self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm. Praise be to Allah. Thank you so much. Brother Gabriel, anything to add, beloved?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, everybody's saying some remarkable stuff, and I've just really got my wheels turning. You know, one of the things that you said, Brother Jabril, around, we've got to a point now as a people where we become attracted to a comfortable hell as opposed to the uncomfortable heaven.
Come on. Woo! Come on.
Like
Talk. Say that
And
again.
because of that,
Run that back.
so as a people, we have become attracted to a comfortable hell as opposed to an uncomfortable heaven. And so when we're thinking about how we deal with the scraps, the crumbs that we're given, and not thinking outside of the box, or thinking outside, or thinking within the black mind, to say, you know what, we got to embrace some discomfort for a little while.
That's right.
You know what I mean? We're going to have to, there's got to be, Brother Jabril, I'm saying this for all the family. It's going to come to a head, family, where a specific generation of us are going to have to commit to years of discomfort for the betterment of the people beyond us. You know, I have conversations all the time with some very close friends, like my circle. And we ask ourselves every now and again, what are we doing for our grandchildren? Mind you, none of us have grandchildren.
Right.
What are we doing for our grandchildren right now? Right now. What are we building? You know, what's the legacy? What's the mindset? What's the world I'm living in? How's the housing structure? How's the finances? How's the spiritual enlightenment? You know, what are we building for our grandchildren, in the sense that they could come into a world that will not have, as Sister Zuna said, the traumas and the epic devastation that we had to come up.
That's right.
And so I'll close by saying this. One of the things that I'm working in, as far as institutions, really is the institution of what I like to call defending our generals. And what I mean by defending our generals is, we have a lot of our elders who were warriors once upon a time, who held down the communities, who are now in cages. They have been serving 20 years in prison, 30 years in prison, 40 years in prison, in some cases even 50 years in prison. These are folks who in the 60s and 70s were our heroes and still are. And unfortunately, what our enemy has done is made the community forget who they were, forget what they've done, forget their sacrifice, and forget their commitment, and forget their devotion to what they thought back then was the creation of a new, liberated, and free world for Black people. And they did things as a response to their enemy in the best way that they knew how. And in many ways, they were brought up on trumped up charges. And if they weren't killed, they were locked up with no parole. And so we start talking about, you know, the fact that all the Move 9 are home right now. If I die tomorrow, I'll be happy that I was a part of the mission that brought the 7 folks to move home. They can live free and not at SCI so-and-so. If I die tomorrow, I can die knowing that I helped our dear brother in New York, Herman Bell, come home. Jaleel Mutakim's coming home in 2 weeks. Matul Shakur hopefully will be home next year. These are individuals who are so important for our work, and I must not forget Russell Maroon Schultz and Philadelphia as well, our Imam Jamil El-Amin, also known as H. Rat Brown. It's important to not forget these individuals in the context of self-governance, because we talk about all those organizations, Black Panther Party, Nation of Islam, Black Liberation Army, all these entities, they were saying it wasn't just, okay, let's provide food for ourselves. It wasn't just, let's have a Black Cross nurses like in the UNIA. The idea was we're doing this because we know that we can take care of us, period. We can take care of us. Black Panther Party in Oakland, we're going to govern ourselves. We can take care of us. In Detroit, same thing. Chicago, Hampton, we take care of us. And so if we have that mindset, you know, we can do it. Again, it got devastated just like Tulsa, everything else. But now we have a new formation. And I think that we're going to find ourselves coming out on top of it for a better world. So thank you very much.
There's going to come a point in time where we're literally going to have our own infrastructure. And when I say literally, I mean like literal. We're going to have our own power generation. We're going to have our own homes. We're going to have our own infrastructure that is completely independent. So when we talk about this, we talk about being independent, and we talk about what does it mean to rebuild communities or to build communities. Our ultimate goal should be able to use skills and knowledge in science, technology, engineering, and math, be able to use these things to literally build a community. So that's where I believe, you know, is my lane. That's where I believe I am with a background in engineering. So right now, as Brother Lamont was saying, this you know, this entire shift to digital and everything kind of taking on digitization. I hate saying that word.
Take your time.
But to be quite honest, you know, talk of that has been happening for years. But what has really happened with this whole COVID thing is that it's really sped it up, right? Because to be quite honest, the whole digital realm really wasn't prepared to be rolled out so quickly. COVID has really made it so to where it's like, okay, well, we have to do this now because we're now in need of these technologies. So we see a lot of companies and a lot of entities scrambling to get talent that is really focused on digital technology. So if you look into certain industries and certain areas, they're recruiting heavily for software developers. They're recruiting heavily for software engineers. They're recruiting heavily for network engineers and just people who have expertise in coding, software, network communications, etc. Because that's where we are right now. This is really the start, or really the beginning of like a brand new shift in industry. So what I took it upon myself to do was to start learning those particular skills. Start learning how to code, start learning about software engineering, start learning about network engineering. Because like I said, eventually there's going to come a time where we're going to need our own Instagrams. We're going to need our own Facebooks. We're going to need our own Zooms. You see what I'm saying? Because, there could be a point in time where these particular things aren't available to us, especially if we're talking about things like these, So we're talking about, subjects like these, when in terms of independence, but we're using, platforms that we didn't create. So there's going to come a time where we're going to have to create those things in order for those conversations to continue. So, yeah.
Wow. Sister Jasmine, did you want to go? You had something? Yes.
I was having trouble unmuting. Just two things that I want to say. one of the things that I want to say, I was talking to a friend of mine actually 2 days ago, and we were just talking about just the value and the respect for the Black woman in society and in the media. And, you know, me and her kind of have different views, but, you know, I was kind of breaking down to her, you know, how important it is, you know, for, you know, to change the idea of the Black woman in the media and, you know, the disrespect that it is out there for us. And she kind of like was listening to me, and she said, you know what, I agree with everything that you're saying. It's all good points, but, you know, it's just the way it is. And I was like, what do you mean it's just the way it is? She's like, it's just the way it is. I agree with you, but that's just not how it is. And, you know, for me, it's about getting out of that mentality that you can't change the tide, that you are not powerful enough to influence your environment, to influence what's around you, because you most certainly can. And if enough of us do it, then we will make change, right? So number one for me is making sure that I'm constantly in that mentality in order to affect change and not do something to question what I'm doing, not because someone subconsciously told me to do it, but also, you know, in the same realm as well. And this kind of just goes back to me just loving the fact that being in the nation and being an MGT, the things that I've learned, you know, number one, like being able to grow your own food, that's something that I'm really getting into, that skill, learning the science of food, to be able to do that for myself. The fact that I've learned how to sew, I don't have to depend on anyone else to dress me or be confined to what is sold in the stores, and I can do that for myself. A lot of the just the skills that I have learned just for my home in order to be sufficient in that way have helped me a lot, and I, you know, plan on continuing to do that. So yes, sir.
Wow. You know, as I'm listening to all of us speak, you know, I was really thinking about, I was getting kind of emotional in my head, thinking about what my answer was. And I really think what Brother Gabriel and Sister Jasmine said really resonated with me, where I think what I'm striving to do really centers around finding my actual purpose. You know, I think that I'm a brother, and this is not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm good at a lot of things when I put my mind to them, you know, and I've been one that people have wanted on their team for this, on their team for that, on their team for this. And I had this conversation with my wife, said, well, what do you want? What do you, Jabril, want? And I was also saying that I find happiness when those close around me are happy. And she told me, Jabril, you cannot have your happiness defined by just the fact that your loved one's wife, brother, you know, or whatever, you know, fellow believer, etc., are happy. You have to be happy for yourself. So I think for me, it boils down to really finding that thing that is solely mine and remembering what it is that not only makes me happy and taking more risks, orienting my mind that yes, I'm paid well at my job, but that's not the goal. Just because, you know, you have that and not being comfortable and reaching beyond that and really doing what I said I wanted to do in terms of producing something for myself as it pertains to engineering. So we talk about research and development. I mentioned that, and being able to have our community see infrastructure for development in the STEM fields. That's something that I strongly desire. And also I'm trying to make sense of this, keep myself agitated. What I mean is keep things in front of me that always remind me that, Jabril, that's not where you want to be. This is not where you have to be or supposed to be. You can always do more. And trying to push myself beyond where I am today, to find that thing and then use that to create infrastructure for myself, my family, and my people. So I'm very thankful for everything that everyone said. And it's a divine reminder for me that the Jabril Muhammad that I was, the Jabril Muhammad that we are looking at, is not necessarily the Jabril Muhammad that will be nor should be. So that's kind of where I am, if that makes sense, trying to equip myself and move forward. So
if I could add on to your point, good brother Jabril, is so first of all, I'm thankful for your transparency and vulnerability on that point, because I found myself in the same position once upon a time as well. You know, being in the mix, being a so-called jack of all trades, being able to assist anyone and everyone. And I had the same conversations with my young brother Frosty, because he was dealing with the same issues. You know, trying to figure out, well, you're good at everything, you know, so, but what, and so I had to tell him, and I've told some of my brothers too, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should be doing it.
right.
What does that mean? That means that, okay, you could be most, you know, the best, you know, when it comes to building, right? You're great with sheetrock, it just comes natural to you. The question becomes, were you put on the planet to do that?
Right.
That's the question. And so we got to really kind of dig deep and have those, you know, internal reflections. You know, for me, I had to come to a point where I said, wow, I was in the road of education for a long time. I loved education. I still do to this day. I'm still called on to do classes in the high schools and even on the colleges. But then I realized, actually, you know what undergirds more of my work actually is along the lines of mental health. Because about the mental health piece, I was saying that so many of my students I was working with weren't matriculating because of undiagnosed or frankly misdiagnosed mental health issues. And that's what kind of tied me more into that direction and realizing, wow, this is more of an interest, and as well as the arts. And then it kind of came to this question of prison. Notwithstanding, my dad has been worked inside the prisons for many, many years. But more importantly, knowing that that's the last place, or the first place really, that the enemy knows that they can put us and place us, since they can't, you know, overtly enslave us, right? So they're going to use that mechanism, you know, as much as they can to kind of keep us, you know, suppressed and repressed. And so for me, it's been a lifelong journey, but I really appreciate your words, Brother Jabril, because it speaks to this question of how do we pursue our passions and how can we use said passion to contribute our best self, right? Our best self towards this new world and towards this new land for ourselves, because we don't want to just, I mean, I tell people all the time, we talk about going to Africa and want to live there. I love the idea. I want to do it myself at some point. But what you don't want to do is go to the continent and bring your worst self to the continent. You want to be able to contribute to the development and not take away the resources and parse them out for yourself. No, you want to be able to come there in the spirit of, you know what, I'm coming to add on. I'm coming to add on to the ongoing legacy of building this righteous, you know, empire for ourselves. So I think that what you said is so valuable, and I think that that's the part of the legacy that we should continue to pursue for ourselves as a people.
Thank you, sir, Brother Gabe. Brother Lamont.
Well, I just two things. What Sister Jasmine said really hit with when she said she was having a conversation with a young lady, her friend, and her friend said, you know, that's just the way things are. And we have to always be in mind that Minister Farrakhan, Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, has taught us that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, one learned man is greater than 1,000 ignorant worshipers. So Noble Drew Ali was one man. The Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey was one man. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is one man. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is one man. But those one men with a predetermined ideal and revolutionary ideal transformed and created a world. So it don't take a whole lot of us. It takes dedicated and like-minded men and women that are willing to sacrifice. And when I heard that, even with the rap music, you know, when Cardi B said what she said, it was very interesting that she said this, and I was like, wow. She said, you know, well, y'all have conscious rappers out there. Y'all don't support them. But listen to the justification for the filth. She won't let her daughter listen to that WAP song, but she'll promote the song. And her mindset was that you have conscious rappers, but y'all don't support them. So, you know, listening to what people say, we got to create our own atmosphere, our own realm of existence. And like you, Brother Jabril, I'll be honest, I've been trying to wrestle, with what I'm great at. And I'm always in the schools talking to young men, cultivating young men, mentoring young men. I recently celebrated my father's 71st, birthday with him. And my sister said something to me that was real. She said something to me a couple years ago. She said, "You always in the community doing this." And
You went out, Brother Lamont. Brother Lamont, you went out.
I don't think he can hear us either.
Oh, man.
Real quick, I don't know what he was saying
Went
towards
out.
the end.
Oh,
Is he back?
you back, Brother Lamont?
you got me?
Yep, we got you now. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So my sister said to me, I don't get jealous when I see you out there. I want you to spend more time with us as a family. And I have, go to a lot of family functions. But she said, I don't get jealous because I realized that you was born into the world to be shared.
Mm.
And when she said it, I was like, huh, what you talking about? But I realized that she realized that God put a mission on me. And every day I'm trying to see what that mission is, working with young people and serving people. And like you said, but I realized that we can do greater works when we have more resources. And even though the jobs and all of that, because my mindset ain't about the job, like you said, I made good money, but my mindset ain't getting comfortable in that because I know with more money and more resources, I could do more to help more people. And that's my mindset, that we have to have a mindset to get up, but not to enrich ourselves, but so we can help other people, because there's so many young people that are depressed, dealing with anxiety. You got a lot of young men and women that go to bed hungry at night. It's just so many situations from a psychological and emotional standpoint where you got a lot of dysfunctionality that's going on in people's homes, where a child can't even really come to school and think about no math or no English or no science, even though we ain't in school, even though we online. Just think about it. How is somebody functioning? If your home is dysfunctional, even though we on remote learning, how are you really learning?
Right.
If your father is abusing your mother, or somebody sneaking into your room at night trying to have sex with you as a young lady, 13 years old, so even though we on remote learning, if your home ain't stable and it's all of this dysfunction going on in your home, if you get online.
God, there he is again.
There it is again.
You went out again, Brother Lamont. Can you hear me? Brother Lamont, go ahead.
That one day we're going to leave here, and part of being responsible is getting some life insurance.
Right.
Because when you leave here, you want to leave something for the people that don't have to worry about burying you, worrying about doing this or doing that, that you leave something for them that they can build with what you sacrificed for. They're not running around here, well, how we going to bury them? We got to do a GoFund. All those kind of things that bring stress on the mind, because somebody is already mourning your loss, but then somebody got to figure out how they're going to bury you and deal with all of the financial aspects that come with that. So, Brother Jabril, I say this, like Gabe, we all going to suffer with that. But as long as we on this road to discovery, we'll find out what our gift is and what we was born into the world to do. And we just keep on working and keep on living. Here, the God to show it to us.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to add something to that and to your point, Brother Jabril. I mean, it's just so powerful to bring up the idea of purpose and what is our purpose and why are we here. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that, what did he say? He said that failure to fulfill your purpose nullifies your right to exist.
Go ahead. Yes, he did.
So it says in the Quran, Allah created nothing without aim and purpose. And so us being here, we're not here in order to be on autopilot. We're not here in order to go with the motions or go with the flow. And so, and not fulfilling our purpose is what has really afforded us life. Our purpose is our currency for us being here. So to not fulfill your purpose or to not live in your purpose is really death, is really self-destruction. And so what's even more important is the journey of finding your purpose, but also when you know your purpose, to not ignore your purpose or to not delay your purpose.
Right.
Because of some other ideal of, okay, I get, we got to have a 9 to 5 and we got to survive. But at the same time, we sometimes focus on these things that aren't pushing or helping us work towards our goals of why we're here in life. And that's really creating ourselves to be depressed or be anxious or just not to be able to function in the end. So that is just so important that I wanted to add.
Yes, man.
Got one last quote. I just brought it up. Sister reminded me. The minister said this was it was actually on my birthday in 2017, 6/26/17. That's why I reposted it on my Instagram. But he said, once you accept righteousness and strive to live a good life, in that action, you will discover your purpose. So I just wanted to put that.
One thing on that point too, brother Dante, and I want to add on too. I mean, so brilliantly said by Sister Jasmine. You know, when I'm working with brothers, you know, in the neighborhood, and many of y'all know this, and Lamont certainly knows this. You know, normally I'm like, look, brothers, and I'll go right to the corner themselves. I say, in so many words, do you think, you know, first of all, do you consider yourself, you know, do you believe in a higher creator, a higher form of universe? I say most times a lot of them say yeah. And I say, do you think that creator in that universe woke you up this morning so you could be on a corner for 10 hours out the day? Do you think your creator, not mine, I'm saying yours, woke you up, put breath in your lungs so that you could be on this corner for 10 hours out of 24? You know what I mean?
Right.
What could have been done in those 10 hours that I saw you when I left for work in the morning and I seen you out here when I came home? You know, and then now all of a sudden, you know, it's triggered, it's discomfort, it's uncomfortable, but we can have a conversation though, right? We got to embrace that discomfort, because until we grapple with some of these realities around purpose and passion, see, I think one of the greatest tricks that our enemy has done to us is to remove, to everybody's point, that sense of purpose on the planet, man. Just
Right.
to remove the sense of passion, to remove the sense of, you know, individual and collective yearning and spirit, you know, to remove a sense of just hope, a sense of like, why am I, you know, what do you always say from the buses? Why am I here? You know, why am I, you know, what? So because it creates this question, you know, as opposed to, you know, being nurtured in a village that will support your gifts, skills, and talents and ideas and thoughts, that puts you in a position to say, you know what, this is actually why I'm here. I'm here to be an engineer. I'm here to come up with a thing called Answer the Bell. I'm here to, you know, provide through music and hip hop lyrics that will manifest and create a sense of urgency in our people. I'm here to work with the brothers. You know what I mean? I'm here to create panel discussions on Zoom and be the best host since, you know, whoever, Brother Jabril. All right. You know, so I mean, I think these are the questions. I think for me, I'll close with this. My brother Amari always talks about, he says, Brother Gabe, what will you regret not doing 30 years from now?
Right.
Mm.
And we always talk about that. And he says it a lot. He's like, Gabe, what will you regret not doing 30 years from now? And it allows me to do all that we're doing. We're creating institutions. We're in the streets. We're mobilizing. We're working on self-definition and self-purpose and self-empowerment. But we're also here in the back of our minds, we're all 8 and 7 and 9 years old. And see, all of us had a dream once upon a time to do something, whatever that was. And so we want to be able to make sure that those dreams don't end up in the cemetery. So whatever it was for you, whether it's writing a book that tells your story, whether it's creating an app that's going to change the world, whether it's, you know, creating an infrastructure for mental health services with the whole city of Philadelphia, whatever it is, let's just get it done. Let's just get it done so we're not having regrets later on.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, family, for all of us watching, we didn't have the audience engagement we would have liked, but we know that there were those of you watching really engaging. This has been self-governance, self-policing, a community rebuilt. And as my brother, reached out to me and said, Brother Gabriel, what really is a community rebuilt? I like to think about going back to the sciences. If we think about anatomy and the body works in unity, but it is not uniform. The heart does not complain to the kidney for doing what the kidney does. The knee does not complain to the neck for doing what it does. They all do what they're supposed to do and work in unison for the glory and protection of that which is this life right here. So as we move to continue to grow and build this community, let us understand you may be the heart, I may be the knee. Someone else may be another major artery, you may be the skin. We need to focus on being the best skin we could ever be, being the best heart we could ever be, and working in the cause of freedom, justice, and equality, and creating heaven on earth today. So with that, I'd like to thank all of our panelists, wonderful panelists, and bring our brother Leroy back on to close us out. Thank y'all so much, and until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Peace. Black power.
Peace.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you all. It's been another great session. This has been really enlightening once again. But we see as the result of our work that the enemy is always busy. Quite a few times while you panelists were working, there were distractions that were being sent into the line, people being cut off the line. I actually had difficulty getting back on just now to participate. So we must be doing something right because we're agitating some folks. So with that, again, I'd like to thank all the panelists. I'd like to thank our facilitator, Brother Jabril, for another great evening. And we want you as the listening audience to stay tuned for our up and coming events. We'll be posting very shortly as to the next one that we will be doing. So stay tuned up, stay healthy, stay safe, and we look to see you all very soon. With that, from all of us in the family of the 10K Fearless, I'd like to greet you one final time with peace and blessings. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Peace and blessings.
All right, no need to come off, guys. We're